Hello, my name is Gail Emma Scott, and I am reading from my novel Double Lives. And it is set in Texas in the mid 1970s. Um, and I'm reading chapter by chapter. There's 34 chapters, and this is chapter 5. Chapter 5, The Price of Temptation, June 1974. As Willy's followers grew in number and donations to his ministry poured in, the family moved from the modest house on the outskirts of Austin to a sprawling, white pillared mansion on a hill overlooking Lake Travis. A lush green lawn, watered by a sophisticated sprinkler system, kept the meticulously landscaped trees and flowering bushes moist despite the Texas heat. On the mansion's steps sat Willy, wearing a crisp white shirt, freshly ironed by one of the new maids. The months that had passed since we last saw him with Carla had significantly increased his income level and improved his appearance. The change of seasons had tanned his skin, and newfound wealth had given him a more relaxed demeanor. It was early summer, and the ease of long days and warm weather had overtaken him completely. He surrendered to reveling in his recent successes and pondered his rapid rise to fame. As he surveyed his sprawling, multi-acre estate, the laughter of his daughter sounded like echoes from a distant world. Betty Sue no longer shared his bed without invitation. Jessie avoided him after school. Dawn, ever the questioner, had grown silent again. The house was filled with luxuries, but the warmth of his family had faded into a cool loneliness. When Willy had first been called to preach back in Tahoka, he had no idea whose voice it was that called him so persistently, telling him to put away evil doing, forget his past, and devote his life to preaching the gospel. He was never quite sure where the voice came from, whether from within or above. But he obeyed it, and as the weeks and months passed and he read more of the Bible, he became consumed by a sense of mission. Sometimes he wondered if he had conjured the voice himself, a desperate man needing redemption, imagining grace. Other nights, he was certain the voice had been divine. Doubt never left him completely, but donations certainly helped to quiet it. He burned with a desire to save individual souls before the final apocalypse, when the world and all its decadence and evils would end in flames, catastrophes, and inevitable disasters. He envisioned the heavens opening and angels descending to save only the born again Christians from eternal death and damnation. Now, preaching before a television camera and reaching thousands of people he would never meet, Willy's sense of divine mission grew more inflamed, as did his enthusiasm to spread his ministry worldwide. His pulse quickening oratory inspired many followers to undergo powerful conversions that transformed their personalities and rearranged their values. With such energy, conviction, and exemplary blind faith, Willy's rise to fame and power was rapid. Nearly 2 years had passed since the Lewises had stumbled upon the anonymous preacher in Tahoka. The Willy Loves You Show, aired nationally on cable, had gained popularity throughout the South and the West. Donations to Willy's ministry totaled more than $50 million in the first year of national broadcasting. Carla's patient speech lessons and grammar drills had significantly refined Willy's manner of speaking, leaving only a touch of Texas twang and a down-home resonance in his otherwise polished English. Carla Lewis had become more than just a speech trainer. She'd become the curator of Willy's public image, the quiet architect behind his reinvention. Her lessons had made him palatable to the urban viewer, the educated donor, and the skeptical station manager. And yet, for all her influence, She remained behind the scenes, invisible in the credits. Sometimes Carla wondered why she felt so devoted to Willy. Was it her mission to refine him, or did she need to be near him? The lines blurred more with each passing lesson. Now a national media celebrity, Willy's income had multiplied so rapidly that he opened several ministry offices, installed dozens of prayer line phones, and hired scores of eager Christians willing to work tirelessly answering toll-free calls for minimum wage. As soon as the Briggs family moved into the mansion, Willy and his dutiful wife hired a chef, two maids, a second butler, and a landscape architect who created a lush garden around the terrace and swimming pool behind the mansion. Spotting a baby blue Mustang entering through the pillared gates at the front of the driveway, Willy stood and waved. Moments later, Carla raced up the hill, her shiny hair flying in the wind. She parked under a eucalyptus tree and emerged in shorts, a sleeveless top, and sandals. In the heat of a Texas summer, dressing modestly was impractical, and she felt comfortable appearing before Willy in casual attire now that they knew each other well. "Shall we have our lesson in the garden?" Willy asked, careful to use proper English. "It's so beautiful now. The flowers are in full bloom." "Certainly," Carla agreed, following him through the house, across the terrace, past the fountain, and into the garden. Willy glanced back at the mansion to make sure no one was watching him. He pulled out a chair for Carla, who sat down, unpacked her leather briefcase, and began arranging pens, papers, notebooks, and grammar guides on the small glass table between them. Carla started the lesson in her usual manner, first checking to make sure Willy had completed his homework assignments. "I certainly did," he said proudly, then proceeded to recite a love poem by John Donne. After he finished, he smiled and took her hand. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For the assignment. I probably never would have discovered such a beautiful poem without your help. It moved me deeply. I chose it with you in mind. I'd hoped you did." He squeezed her hand. His touch felt warm and electric. She looked down at his hand on hers, confused. They had agreed to remain faithful to their spouses and keep their relationship purely platonic. Neither of them had mentioned their latent attraction to each other in months. "I'm amazed at your ability to memorize things," Carla said, gently pulling her hand away from his. "It always struck me as odd that even when you spoke improper English, you could quote the Bible at length without making a single mistake. Yours is a very unusual sort of intelligence." Willy stood and moved his chair closer to hers. He gazed at her quietly for a moment, then clasped her head firmly in both hands and pressed his lips hard against hers. Startled, her eyes widened, and as soon as he released her, she fell back, dazed, into her white wicker chair. "I can't stand it any longer," Willy said. "You're too beautiful to resist. I've been living a lie." Carla was too shocked to speak. I'm a pretender," Willy went on. "My self-deceit keeps me awake at night, tortures me with restless dreams of you. It makes me shrink from my wife's touch. I want to lie in your arms. I can't pretend any longer, Carla." He knelt in the grass beside her and laid his head in her lap. "I can't believe this," she said softly, playing with his hair. "I thought you might love me, but I wasn't sure. Sometimes I can see it in your eyes. A certain light glows in them, and you smile every time I walk into a room. But it's more than that," he said, lifting his head to study her calm face. "I was such a fool to think I should bury my love for you simply because society is full of malicious gossip. God loves those who love each other. If we sin by being in love, then so be it. If later we find out we've made a mistake, there's always forgiveness. We will be redeemed. God uses broken vessels, Willie went on, his voice growing husky. King David sinned too, and still he was loved by thousands. I've given my life to the Lord. Doesn't that count for something? He wanted to believe it, needed to believe it, because if loving Carla was wrong, what was the purpose of all his preaching? Surely God would understand. Surely he had seen Willie's loneliness, his sacrifice. And wasn't love, true love, proof of divinity? The end of chapter 5.